Hello, it's great to have you with us at our third Business versus Loneliness webinar. My name is Nick Gulliver and I'm Director of Advocacy at the Economics of Mutuality Alliance. Today we'll be exploring the question, how can the physical and digital spaces businesses create and operate be designed to combat loneliness? In an era of remote working, new forms of isolation, technological change, and disappearing third places, we believe it's time to reimagine the environments where people come together, not just as functional spaces, but as places for belonging, interaction, and well-being. This webinar builds on the insights from our Business versus Loneliness report, developed in partnership with the University of Manchester. We surveyed 10,000 people across 5 countries and found of those who experienced loneliness, 45% reported experiencing intimate loneliness, a lack of close relationships, whilst a striking 60% experienced relational or collective loneliness. In other words, the most common forms of loneliness aren't about intimacy, they're about belonging. And that opens the door for organizations to step in through the spaces they shape, the experiences they create, and the cultures they build. Today's session will spotlight the power of design, policy, and programming in offices, retail locations, digital platforms, and beyond to bring people together in ways that feel natural, inclusive, and intentional. We'll also consider practical principles you can apply within your own organization. Before we hear from our group of expert panelists today, I'd like to take a few minutes to outline our Loneliness Change Compass, which will frame the discussion. We developed the compass, which is the centerpiece of our report, with Professor Qualter, who you'll be hearing from later. We designed it as an innovative framework to help businesses identify effective intervention strategies to tackle loneliness. Let me pull up a few slides. I am doing that for you very slowly, but it is coming. Okay, here we go. So the foundation for understanding our change compass, and indeed the foundation for understanding how businesses can tackle loneliness, relates to barriers. Loneliness dissipates when individuals overcome it on their own terms, using their own coping strategies to do so in a manner uniquely suited to their personal psychology and circumstances. Therefore, although companies cannot directly eliminate loneliness for someone, they can play a crucial role in removing certain barriers that hinder individuals from addressing it themselves. As a result, effective strategies for companies to combat loneliness should focus on identifying and dismantling those barriers, thereby empowering individuals to resolve their loneliness in ways that are relevant to them. In order to identify the barriers to overcoming loneliness, we mapped key dimensions of the problem based on our research and expert academic input. We began by mapping the dimensions typically associated with loneliness interventions, individuals, and social connection. When combined, these dimensions reveal a key barrier to overcoming loneliness, lacking readiness for social connection. This barrier might look like underdeveloped social skills, mental health challenges, burnout or emotional exhaustion, cultural or linguistic differences, or even unaffordability. But we noticed another key dimension of loneliness, which is often overlooked, and which forms the focus of today's webinar: spaces. Conventional understanding regards not feeling lonely as the individual's responsibility. Although each of us do, of course, bear some responsibility, we want to emphasize the importance of place and environment in driving loneliness. So when we combine the dimensions of social connection with spaces, we see a new barrier emerge, lacking opportunities for social connection. This is about external environments that fail to enable connection, even for socially ready individuals. For example, workplace silos and poor team design, remote work reducing spontaneous social interactions, transactional service environments, decline of third places, digital spaces that reinforce comparison, exclusionary spaces, poor transportation and mobility infrastructure, gentrification and privatization of shared spaces, or inaccessible digital platforms. Although adding spaces to this barriers map created a fuller picture, we saw that another significant and perhaps surprising dimension was missing: positive alone time. Instinctively, we want to help lonely people by creating opportunities to meet others or teaching them the right skills and mindsets to connect properly. However, our research found that these approaches miss other important strategies. Being alone in solitude emerged as one of the preferred emotional self-management strategies in our survey responses. So this introduces a third barrier: lacking access or mindsets to appreciate solitude. This is about helping individuals find value in solitude instead of seeing it as a void. Examples of this barrier include social comparison during alone time, constant digital distraction, gendered safety issues, unfamiliarity with non-social self-care practices, fear of boredom, and limited autonomy. Finally, we combine the dimensions of positive alone time and spaces to reveal a fourth barrier: lacking comfort being alone in public spaces. This is about designing environments where solo time is normalized and even enjoyable. Examples of barriers here include restaurants and cafes that cater only to groups, lack of single-user public amenities, design that invites attention to aloneness, lacking social scripts for being alone in public, or overemphasis on togetherness in marketing campaigns. So, having mapped the loneliness problem with the systemic approach, we were in a position to articulate the strategies companies could use to tackle loneliness. As you can see, the loneliness change compass superimposes directly on top of the barriers map. The 4 intervention strategies provide pathways to action for business leaders looking to help tackle the problem of loneliness, whether through external initiatives aimed at a broader societal impact, or internal strategies focused on reducing loneliness amongst employees. In today's panel discussion, we'll focus on the right-hand side of the compass: offer spaces for social connection and offer spaces for positive alone time. I'll now hand over to Alastair Colin-Jones, who will be facilitating the conversation. Alastair is the Executive Director of Mutual Value Labs, an innovation agency for purpose-driven business, which is part of the Economics of Mutuality Alliance. Alastair.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks for that great introduction. Wonderful to see the compass at work after all the hard work that went into it. I see Pamela nodding in the background there. We've got a wonderful panel for you today, like really genuine experts on this topic of loneliness, well-being, and spaces. I'll introduce them briefly and let you know who to expect, what their expertise is, what organizations they're representing. And then as ever, there's a dangerous pitfall to avoid with panels, right? We don't want to have 3 mini speeches. We want to have some dialogue. So that's going to be the role of Pamela Qualter on it. She'll be our academic discussant to try and get the best thinking and nuance out of our 2 wonderful panelists from industry. And with that, I'll introduce Erin. So Erin is an award-winning architect, researcher, and renowned thought leader on the power of the built environment to foster well-being and human connection. Erin is a principal senior vice president and health and well-being design leader at the global design firm HKS, where she helps integrate research and practice to advance design for health, combat loneliness, and foster resilience across the globe. We'll also have Tasha Young, and she is the Chief Membership Officer at the Social Hub. She has over 2 decades of leadership expertise in customer experience, membership product development, and retention strategy. She leads the global growth of the company's membership proposition, including co-working, events, education, and community strategy. Previously, she was the Global Vice President of Member Experience and Retention at WeWork and Director of Experience and Retention at Virgin Active. She is passionate about community building and social impact, and she's driven by the belief in the power of meaningful human connection. And as I mentioned, we'll also have our close partner and colleague, Professor Pamela Qualter, who's a professor at the University of Manchester, where she is one of the foremost researchers on the topic of loneliness and belonging. And she sits on the technical advisory group for the WHO Commission on Social Connection, having authored over 130 articles on the topic. So welcome to the panel, everyone. I'm delighted to have you. We're going to start with a question to you, Erin. Maybe you can also tell us a bit about HKS as you enter into answering this question. But as someone who's really deliberately and consciously tried to design spaces that improve well-being outcomes, can you actually share some of those principles that you've developed over your years of experience?
Yes, I would love to. So, as Alastair said, I work at a large global architecture firm. We have offices all around the world, including in London. I am located in Dallas, Texas. And really my background in psychology, environmental psychology brought me to architecture. And many years ago, I really identified, like, listening to fabulous experts around the world talk about loneliness. I was like, what is architecture doing about this? What do we need to know and what is out there? And so at the time, that was really before like all of this push around loneliness became more popularized and people started like deep diving into it. But so really I looked specifically at this component of social health. So understanding all of these different aspects like social cohesion, loneliness, social disconnection, all of it. And what sort of flowed to the surface was 7 different aspects that I've termed panache. So, for anybody that's familiar with the term panache, a little like something extra. But each part has a really significant part to play. So I'll just try to like go through those really quickly. And then I'm happy to later kind of like give you guys an example of what that looks like. But placeness is really about giving the place a soul. I was hearing, some of this like collective disconnection and this sense of just, placelessness. And I think that really intentionally thinking about and anchoring in your local place, in your community, having places that speak to that rather than, are just completely generic. Accessibility is incredibly important. And that doesn't just mean, ramps and doors, but really signals that say that you're wanted here, you're welcome here, and that make it easy to get there. Nature is about really letting life in. So thinking about everything from like sunlight and trees. I have a giant fiddle leaf fig over here. Really having those aspects that help to calm our nervous system, which I think is really important when we get into conversations around solitude. Like those aspects are really important to calm us. Activation, however, is really about like offering that spark. So, anyone that's familiar with the work of Jane Jacobs, that aspect is, I think that you can think of activation as like, oh, there's this fun thing over here and it comes and it goes, but like that's activation. But you can also just think of it in like the mundane everydayness of the things that we need to do, grocery, going out to eat, shopping, going on a walk, like and then thinking about how, as we design, places are overlapping. And I think of, I was just recently in Florence, and I think of the overlapping piazzas and how they're just examples of natural activation. There's choice and giving people agency to decide if they want to opt in or like be more spectator and like slowly grow. Human scale, which is really about this dimension is like very environmental psychology, which is that idea of like prospect and refuge. Like, do you feel safe and cozied in, but you can see out? So if you think of like booth seating or sitting underneath a tree. And then the last one is that I just kind of recently have been working on as I've been developing a book on the topic is really about letting places grow. It's about evolution. And I think that is really critical when we think about participatory design, not only from the beginning, but also throughout the life of the place and how we continue to build. So. Thanks so much.
Wonderful. It's a long acronym, but the panache is
So long,
easy.
so long. But
easy
yeah,
to
it's
remember.
meaty.
And I mean, how did this framework come about? Is it a mix of you kind of building some of these spaces and kind of putting your finger on, oh, that's really worked there? I guess it's been a
Yeah.
very emergent process. And any examples or moments in your experience that you could share would be wonderful.
Yeah, I will say, you know, I'm very like researcher first. So a lot of it really emerged from the peer-reviewed literature. Plus like my natural, like, yeah, you know, like, and then I have, it's more of a, like a grounded approach if there's any other researchers around of really like sitting with hundreds and hundreds of articles, and then kind of having these themes emerge. And then, yeah, you're right. It's grown, or it's like it's also evolved in these different ways. So one project that I absolutely love, is the University of California, San Diego has what's called a learning and living neighborhood. And, you know, when you think about social connection and like those times where we feel most lonely, um, those are usually times of transition, like times where we're in a new place, we don't know people, and like college, like moving
Yeah,
away
doesn't.
from your, right?
Yeah,
Like so
absolutely.
ripe for that. And so the design really meets all of these aspects, and it's so cool because we actually did a pre-post um, that looked at it like before when like where those same people were living, and then after. And actually, one of them is at University College London right now, and we stay close. And she's a student that was like our embedded in-house person that could like report prior.
Okay.
And they did so many of these different strategies through really what they call nested scales of belonging. So thinking about like each, you know, when you talk about different types of loneliness, like that ability to be alone with a small group, scaling up, you know, large. Um, and even though the pre was pre-COVID and the post was during COVID, we saw an 8.2 reduction in depression scores. We saw reported reductions in loneliness, increased satisfaction with place and with social places. So, I mean, it was really, really striking and amazing. Yeah.
That's wonderful. And I mean, how often do you get that kind of request of, hey, you know, Erin, build us a place that's, you know, purpose designed to reduce depression
Yes.
and make people feel more connected? That feels like
Yes.
a dream, a dream
Yeah.
mandate.
So, I mean, I covertly or overtly am planning on making it more cool every day to do exactly that. And I think that that's why I love things like this and always want to be a part of them, because I'm like, yeah, this needs to be the norm. Not like, hey, it's fine that we built this new high rise without talking to anybody and without offering anything back to the community. Like, I want those people to be like, oh, I'm sorry, you're not legally allowed to do that based on your like based on both zoning, what we think is appropriate, the tax incentives that you're getting,
Mhm.
those are tied to you doing the right thing. And so actually, surprisingly, within the last, I don't know, I'll say 3 months, I've gotten 3 different projects that have like explicitly called it not as like their primary thing, but everything from really large workplaces to redesigns or like master plans of downtowns. So I believe in it.
Wonderful.
Let's make
Well,
it happen together, people.
you're sharing a panel with someone who is hard at work in exactly the same direction. So, Tasha, thank you so much for being with us. You know, tell us a bit more about social hubs, but it's a wonderful business that is trying to do exactly this, of bring into the core of the way that it thinks about its role in the world, this idea of how to create spaces of belonging. So yeah, tell us more about how it's working.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I'm inspired by listening to Erin already. The Social Hub, who are we? So we own and operate 21 locations across Europe, and we really are like a true hub of products and experiences. So you mentioned some in the intro, but we have hotel rooms, student and extended stay rooms, co-working, meeting rooms, gyms, event spaces, rooftops, public parks, you name it. We are a true hub. And we welcome around 2 million guests each year from all over the world, actually. And one really exciting thing is last year we became B Corp certified, which is we're one of the largest in the industry to have this accolade. So it's a real testament to how we are truly trying to do good. So yeah, that's who we are.
Wonderful. And I know it's not quite how you intended the activate word in the acronym, Erin, but you have the spaces, but your role in particular is about going beyond the physical space itself, but actually what happens in those spaces. So how are you activating all those different spaces that you mentioned? What does that programming look like, and what are the lessons you're learning?
Yes, so for community for us is culture. It's our culture, it's who we are. And as a result, we've delivered over 6,000 events. If you take the last year alone, we had over 100,000 of our members and the community kind of in our spaces. And it's all designed essentially to connect the very diverse communities we have in our spaces. That's our ambition. I could talk for a while about what we do, but I'd say one event that really stands out to me and is really important for us is our community tables. They are very heavily curated, intimate dinners, always centered around a specific topic of interest of people who are making a real impact in the city of some shape or form. They're typically co-hosted by us and one of our ambassadors with us. And we really curate the guest list, seating plan. We try and spark the conversations. We always try and deliver a twist to make it a very memorable, fun evening. And those events are always the ones that I just hear people talking about years after. They're always the ones that I can tell people have stayed connected from. And, I can think of one example that comes to mind. We met this really inspiring young man in one of our community tables in Rome who is doing an awful lot to running an organization to essentially empower and connect young students, young talent. And like fast forward now, we're working with him on upscaling all of our students through loads of workshops and the neighborhood actually. So it really does bring about change, which I love.
Wonderful. So my only question then is when's our invite coming?
You're always welcome at the Social Hub.
Okay. I mean, joking aside, I think the hard-nosed question here is I think we've all been part of a co-working space or a club or some kind of membership organization that either implicitly or explicitly promises that kind of engagement. And then, the usual thing will happen, budget pressures, cost pressures, and lo and behold, the very promise of community is the first thing that kind of gets cut. I mean, what's the reality like for the Social Hub as a business? How are the impact and the business things going hand in hand for you?
Yeah, I mean, I can really relate to that question, having spending 20 years, advocating for community and programming. Of course, it comes up, and it typically comes up when you can struggle to equate the value of community-led work into financial outcomes ultimately. And as I mentioned before, community for us is not a nice to have. It's really an essential component of, we are called the Social Hub. We are social by nature. And I feel just strongly that people can replicate spaces and design very easily, and people can't replicate your culture and your community very easily at all. And it's well documented, well known in membership clubs that the more intangible benefits of who are the people here, what's the programming like here, they're the reasons people stay for years and years and years. The moment your product becomes a utilitarian cold product, the moment you just become comparable to the masses, and you ultimately lose people and churn.
lost Tasha. I think we have. Yeah. Okay. Let's hopefully you rejoin us, Tasha. In the meantime, Pamela, why don't I invite you? Erin's been excitedly listening. I know you've got a lot of comments.
I'm an avid note taker,
Okay,
and
okay.
so don't. Okay, great. So
yeah, me too. No, I loved listening to you, and your enthusiasm is very contagious, Erin. So thank you very much. What I wanted to say was to build on this panache idea. What I really love is listening to all, each of those key components. I just thought this is so heavily grounded in the academic literature. So first of all, really well done. That was really, really nice to see. So super. And what I also really liked is it's something that you see across the lifespan. So lots of these issues are not something that you would just be thinking about, later adolescence and middle adulthood. Actually, this is across the board. So it then made me think about intergenerational spaces. And if you got any thoughts about that, it's as a conversation, really.
I don't think that the generation should like ever mix. No, just kidding. Yes, what a great question. I love to hear that. That makes me so happy. I also will say one of the things, so I came up with panache. I hadn't called it that yet, and then I started traveling, and I would see spaces that were really well used and everybody was in there, and like they would have it, and I would see spaces that like weren't, and I'd be like, ooh, these are the core pieces that are missing. Like, so yeah, I mean, I think especially when we talk about things like accessibility, right? Those are multi-layered, but as someone, I've lived with my grandfather, I've like had times where I've been in a wheelchair and other times where I've pushed my daughter in strollers. And so for me, like the things that you do to design for accessibility are really important. I also think that that piece about choice. So, I think those two working together, thinking about the different generations. So, when you're outdoors, allowing kids to, be loud and run around and do all the things, but also understand acoustically, if you're inside, that's really a hard echo situation for older adults, and really highly sensitive people like me. But that I think that, I love some great examples like Marmalade, or okay,
Marmalade
good.
Plus.
Am I
Yeah.
saying that right? Okay, great, good. I can see their logo, I can see their like pictures, but I think, yeah, not only how you design and think of those generations, how like that evolution part is like this co-creation of, okay, let's do this project and what does that look like? And, and activating it in different ways that are like about co-creation. So I love the question.
Yeah, and I think kind of co-creating together is just brilliant. I mean, bringing different generations together is wonderful, and what they actually can produce is also great. Am I allowed to ask another question, Alastair?
Can I bring Tasha back in?
Yeah.
Because she was mid-thought before the internet rudely cut her off. But on this point that Erin and Pamela have just raised, this kind of, I don't know if I was to think of it as a meeting a variety of emerging needs, right? That different people occupying the space will have those needs. You, in kind of the work of the social hub, has evolved from students and then tourists and then business people and now you're at this wonderful moment of now the neighborhood's knocking on the door and saying, like, what about these shared spaces outside the ones that you own and operate? And so there's this emergent feature again of meeting a new set of needs. So what's going on with that? How are you branching into the communities as well and co-creating with them?
Yes, and apologies, my laptop decided it was lonely and wanted to shut Zoom down, so apologies for that. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the beautiful things I feel about the social hub is we have such a diverse community. We have really, the next generation of talent. We have young students in our spaces. We have startup businesses, established businesses kind of in our co-working spaces. And then we have kind of the locals, the neighbors coming in as our day-to-day members, or not even members at all. They're just coming in because they're curious about us, or they feel it's a safe space. And for us, we have always been about setting roots in cities. That's why we own and operate our places. We ultimately want to be in cities that have thriving creative scenes. They have leading, of course, academic institutions. They are entrepreneurial, and they just thrive for tourism, because then it ticks all of our boxes. But we also don't ever want to be seen as that another flash in the pan international hospitality brand that doesn't talk or connect to the local neighborhood. That is absolutely not who we are. So we have tried to, and we continue to try even harder to integrate ourselves in our neighborhoods by ultimately talking to our neighbors. We want to know what they like, what they need. And then we work deeply with local partners. So local businesses, we promote them heavily to our members. We bring them in to do pop-up events, give them space to showcase themselves. We're also inviting our neighbours, noting that some of our places have public parks, so they're there already, but some don't. And we really want to make them feel that this is a place that we really want you to come in. There is no closed doors for you. So we put on specific events. I think about our latest hub in Florence Belfiore. We put on an amazing neighbourhood event, opened up the full rooftop to them all, and put on lots
a piazza, maybe?
Yeah.
Erin?
I just wish I had known when I went. Like, I would have come to visit you guys.
Oh, well, you can always come back. But yeah, it was a beautiful event because it was just so nice seeing lots of, a real mix of generations there, a real mix of locals, but also new expats kind of coming in, feeling like this is a safe space to go. Families. It was a really wonderful event. And just one more example I'd love to give you is, we have a talent foundation, which is essentially where we launch 1% of all of our revenues to support sort of change makers that face barriers to opportunities. So as a result, we've supported 120 scholars in partnership with local universities to come stay with us. And it's not just giving them a hotel room for a year or whatever. It's actually about integrating them into the community. We give them mentorship. We do so much programming to connect that group together with others. So yeah, lots of examples.
Wonderful. It's a bit, every city, they're like, oh, that's the student area, right? And it's like you guys is like eroding. It's like there's no such thing. These are neighborhoods with students, with tourists, with elderly, with young, with families, etc. It's a wonderful vision. And certainly is fulfilling kind of the deep need that we need to kind of bring this diversity back together and feel more connected. Pamela, your itching question, please.
No, it's not an itching question. I was reflecting then on what you were saying. I think you're absolutely right. What is so lovely to hear is the fact, Tasha, that you are breaking down those barriers. And by bringing all of those people together, there's an understanding, isn't there, then, that whatever we are, wherever we're coming from, we're human beings and we all have the same worries. We get excited about similar things, and realizing you're just like, the 10-year-old girl around the corner, you like similar things like the color pink. That's me, and one of my neighbors. That's lovely. There's something really quite special about that. So, again, I want to thank you. You're doing something really very, very unique and special. My burning question was really just one about culture. So I'm kind of thinking you're working across, you said 28 locations in Europe. You said, there are specific things that are very similar within those locations, but there will be differences between those locations as well. And I wondered how you managed that, what kind of approach you took to that.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I said about listening to the local neighborhood and not assuming you know exactly what you want because you've done it once in Amsterdam. It's going to be very different when you're in Italy, Spain, etc. So we make sure that our local teams are also in the driving seat a lot because they know their culture, they know who's around them. So we empower them a lot to think along with us. So we still deliver this sustainable social hub message to the world that we care and we're giving back, and we do similar programming, but we always tweak it depending on the culture and their needs. So it's really dependent on listening and empowering our local teams to tailor.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, I'm kind of thinking, as an academic, if there are other academics listening in, that is something really important for us to take away, because I think often we listen just to the research and the research findings, and we forget that actually there are people in these environments that know far more about what actually can happen within their communities. So it's a really nice reminder. Thank you.
Thanks, Pamela.
Yeah,
I'll let you answer in 1 second. Guys, if you're there listening, feel free to drop a question. Oh, as I said it, the first question came in. Thank you, audience.
Perfect.
If you want to ask more, don't be shy. Sorry, Erin. Please reply.
No, you're good. Okay, I'm gonna find it. I think it was, I don't know. It's gone. It's okay. It'll come
Sorry,
back. It's okay. No.
So actually, there is one that's coming from Helena Jenkins. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Local authorities are key to creating the built environment. How can local governments be more sensitive and aware of the importance of social health in our communities?
I love that. So I'm happy for others to answer, but I'll just say, so I've from both a local, meaning in my district, serving as a commissioner on local projects that like help to provide funding to things. I very quickly realized that we need to help people to see through this lens. I do think the more that it becomes mainstream to understand the cost of it, the cost to our health system, the cost to our democracies, the cost to our economics, all of this is negatively impacted by this like soft thing of social and relationships, which to me is just like totally bogus. It's like, and so it's just about consistently, to me, like kind of mainstreaming it as common sense and completely essential.
Right. Yeah, like we've talked about culture, but there isn't one culture, right? Cultures are butting up against each other all the time. And so there's one culture that we're trying to inhabit and enlarge and grow and work on. And yet there's other cultures that somehow are pushing against, the emergence of that. And so I love that response of, actually, we need to tell the world what's the cost of not doing this, right? To the world. I assume that Tasha, you've got. Oh, sorry, Pam. Go ahead.
No, sorry. I'm quite happy for Tasha to come in.
Well, I know, Tasha, you've got increasing like pull from local authorities, right? Saying, come here. There's some work for you to do here. Yeah, if you could speak to that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, our mission is trying to show the world that you can do good and make money at the same time. Trying to get those two relationships together. Community is not just about a cost line for us. And when I cut off, what I was trying to say was, because of that intense focus, we're seeing really high engagement from our community, 80% plus sort of being engaged in our community in one way or another. And as a result, from those people that are engaged, their customer lifetime value is so much stronger. What they're giving back to the social hub and the surrounding neighborhood is so much stronger. So trying to evidence like the financial outcome with the community programming is such a key focus for us to try and show the world you can do good and make money at the same time. So that's our personal mission.
I've heard that somewhere before, but I can't fill it now. I'm joking. Pamela, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to highlight the fact that the World Health Organization has highlighted in its recent report, that social connection is a key component of health. And I think in the report, it's very clear that there are massive issues to countries that don't actually try and tackle that. I think the issue is there's not a lot of money around. So I like Tasha's point. I like the focus of the Economics of Mutuality Alliance, where it's very much, businesses are going to have to be a key component of being able to answer that, and address loneliness. So I think it is great to hear businesses thinking in that way. How can you do social good whilst at the same time earning some money? Because governments are going to really struggle to try and support those people who are reporting loneliness.
Great. And I'm curious, Erin, in HKS, is there kind of a push in responses to RFPs or programs to try to do the kind of the work of saying, in this space in San Diego, there was this cost associated with this build. However, look at what's been saved in, I don't know, counseling hours because students have less depression, or I mean, is that, and this Eric, I'm trying to channel your question.
It's super statistically really easy to isolate those variables, so no worries. Just kidding. For all the researchers out there. That's so yeah, I think when I think about how the part about finances and what we specifically do to look at and understand those aspects, to be honest, like at our core, most of our businesses understand, and I use business loosely because we also work with schools and hospitals and lots of different types of institutions. But I think that there's really a growing understanding that this aspect has to be a part of it. I think what's happening is like, okay, and then how much are we able to lean into that? They may use the words like community or, it needs to support well-being, and understanding that there's a part of well-being. I'm so grateful that in my lifetime and in my time as an architect, I went from being taught, nobody talked about well-being, or mental health or whatever in architecture. I did because I was a dual psychology major, but people literally thought that like it was a bad thing. And now architecture, it's totally mainstream to ask for well-being. And I think that making it clear that this is an aspect of that. I also just want to say, like, even within our own offices, each one is used as a learning lab, and we are modifying pieces and being able to do that type of thing. And we are finding identity anchors through, different aspects, as well as programming that link to the specific people, just like Tasha's talking about, as well as the specific neighborhoods or geographies.
Our language can be revealing, can't it? Because we could call this stuff a cost when actually, right, what we're saying is it's an investment. It just depends how you look at it. And Tasha, I know you've got a wonderful role at the social hubs, the connector, the connector role, right? And there's one way of looking at that role of saying that's an extra head count, right? Or like that's exactly who we are. I don't know if you can riff off of that.
That's exactly it. Firstly, I just love that we call them connectors rather than, I don't know, event organizers or whatever, because it completely changes your mindset of what you're actually doing. You're there to connect the communities together. And yeah, like I said, it's a non-negotiable for us with the social hub. We're about connecting communities, and connecting that to financial goals is the mission that we constantly push, to show the world that, this engagement does good for the bottom line as well as the broader sort of well-being of community.
Yeah.
I just want to add a tiny little thing, because I had kind of forgotten your question about the cost. I just disagree that it needs to cost more, especially from an architectural standpoint. So yeah, I think that there's ways that you can do it that do cost more. There's ways that you can do it that don't cost more at all, but it's really just, sometimes it's like you have all of the exact same spaces. It just is like, if you lay them out like this, it doesn't work. And if you lay them out like this, it does. So I think that's important.
So it's a question of intent. Like what are you?
Yeah. It's always, we always start our projects like before we lay any lines on paper, we start with saying, okay, what are your values? If this project is wildly successful, you know, how would we measure that success? What would that success look like? And then being able to say, okay, we're going to use that as our North Star to design all of these aspects using both evidence, but also listening to the communities, listening to the users, et cetera.
How, like, if you've got, I mean, you've got investors or clients in HKS, Tasha, and social hubs, you've obviously got shareholders, you've got kind of these commitments to give 1% of your revenue whilst delivering the social purpose on top. How do you manage those kind of stakeholder pressures?
I think it's a good question. I think it goes back to my prior point that we want to be seen as a business that from within our shareholders and beyond, right? That we are the case study, if you like, of doing good also means making you money. So if I focus on these things, it's not a cost line, it's delivering profit through increasing customer lifetime value. As I talk about retention rates, our staff aren't churning over as fast, you know, our members most certainly aren't as well. So for us, it's about connecting the dots and telling those stories, and ultimately working with the municipalities as well to tell the same stories about how we do this for the locals, the neighbours.
Mm-hmm.
Pam, we've got a question that I think is perfect for you in the chat,
Okay.
which is basically, it still feels like loneliness is often talked about with elder generations. So there's still a bit of stigma associated. I don't know if you guys are still, you know, oh, do we really need to talk about loneliness again, or isn't that for a small group of people? Yeah, you've thought about this a lot. So
yeah, we've done an awful lot of academic research on stigma in relation to loneliness. And what's fascinating is there is a real belief that that it's a weakness, that there is something wrong with you if you experience loneliness, despite the fact that we know that most people will experience loneliness quite a few times during their life. Most people get over it, but you know, it's still intense, it's still really difficult, but we still have this stigma. But it actually seems to be driven by the individual feeling that, rather than there actually being out there people who believe that. So it's like we can open up to others and talk about the experiences. We're not dismissed by those other people, but we fear we might be. So that's where the stigma seems to have the most impact. And I think it's about talking about it more. I think early days, certainly in the UK, when we had our first minister for loneliness, we talked about loneliness only in relation to old people early on. And what we saw amongst younger people was that they almost felt there was something even worse about loneliness when they experienced it, because, hey, that's what old people get. And this is awful because now I'm feeling it. Once we started changing that discourse, we're seeing that actually young people are quite open about it, much more open, I think, than previous generations. I mean, they are about mental health, so it wouldn't surprise me that they're also more open about loneliness. But I do think we just got to talk about it more. And I think, you know, reduce that stigma of talking about it.
do you ever solve loneliness? That's what your point.
No.
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
there's that whole narrative of,
Yeah,
you know, let's end loneliness. You don't want to
yeah,
end it because it's really useful. You know, actually,
yeah,
that minute you experience loneliness, you know, you want to change something about your social relationships. It's horrible. It's an absolutely horrible experience, isn't it? You know, we can get frustrated, angry, very sad, but we do something about it in the same way we do if we get angry or we get down. You know, we do something to change that because it's such an uncomfortable state of being. We do something. So what we want to do, though, is to provide more opportunities, more
right.
social spaces so that people can come together when they're experiencing that. Because I think often what happens is people are unsure about what to do when they're experiencing it. So having social spaces, whether that's to come together with your family and talk about it, or whether that's to meet new people, it's having that and making that available for people. But what we really don't want to do is end it. It's about enabling people to manage it and overcome it themselves.
And there's a question, and I'm curious, I mean, Erin and Tasha do chime in. The Aziz has put in the chat that, one of the big findings of a report was that, to your point, Pamela, that actually the younger generations are more, as much, if not more, battling feelings of loneliness in the sense of lacking belonging. How different ought our programming be? Like, what does an opportunity need to be to invite a Gen Z versus an elderly? I mean, there's the accessibility questions, but deeper than that, is there a meaningful difference, or at core are we humans? And there's a kind of a fundamental, just actually don't overcomplicate this, please.
Yeah, I mean, all the research suggests that the way we experience newness is exactly the same from about 5 years of age all the way up throughout the ages. The experience is the same. The reasons for experiencing are different, but the actual experience is still the same. So really, we don't need to complicate it. We just need, again, to provide those spaces. They might have to be age appropriate, but it's about providing those. So I don't think we need to complicate it.
Yeah, we try. I totally echo your point. I think we need to simplify it as much as possible in terms of how people can connect. And one thing that we did, we started off thinking about how do students connect with co-workers, and it was almost like, oh no, they're two different beings. They don't want to connect. And it's like, no, they totally do. We just need to find the common ground. And that's why we changed all of our programming to be much more about, well, actually, what's your interest? What do you care about? What are your values? And then we try and connect you on those topics. So at least there's some element of familiarity when you walk into that room. You might see very completely different people, but you're united in one way. So that for us has been a more successful strategy than looking at student versus a co-worker.
Yeah, they're easy categories to fall into and think, oh, you cater for that. But it's just a matter of time. That student in a matter of time will be a coworker, and that coworker might be a traveling business person, and then we're all old. So at some point. Erin, did you have a comment?
It may be like a total squirrel. But Pamela got me like so excited about, so recently, I'm gonna say earlier this year, there's some amazing research out of Harvard, I think in their cell biology lab, really we've been looking for decades at like the neural pathways of loneliness, right? And people have looked at it in all of these different ways. And what this study found was that it acts in the exact same ways as hunger and thirst, meaning that it is not about like feeling like it's not about feeling like, oh, this is great and rewarding, like drinking a sugary drink. No, it's fundamental. And when it's missing, your brain says like, get that soon. And so I just really want to normalize like loneliness. Yes, chronic loneliness, I feel like, which is kind of part of what we're talking about, but just like, if we're honest, probably people feel lonely at least every week, every day. I don't like, and so the thing is like, okay, and then does that trigger behavior? Just like you feel hungry and you decide to eat, or you feel thirsty and you do that. So when we deny that over time is when it starts to become like kind of what I felt like I was hearing Pamela talk about. Then we opt out because we feel like we're going to be rejected. And so we're like, oh, okay, I can no longer tolerate that socially. But the study, I think if you see it in parallel to humans, is just so telling, because part of it is also the physicality of being with people is part of what I thought was really interesting. So they separated the mice in a way where like they could see them, they could smell them, they could all the things, but they couldn't physically touch each other. And the mice like were really distraught. And I think that like that's when people are like, oh, it's fine, AI is just going to replace our social relationships, like I'm solid. I think I like the power of human touch, the power of, actually smelling the person that you're next to. I know it sounds weird, but like it's really important.
And I think that so many people said that kind of thing in the report, didn't they, Alastair? It was very much that you didn't want these intimate relationships with other people. You just wanted to be with other people, an acknowledgement that you were part of the human race.
Right.
So that time alone, but with other people in a safe
Yeah.
space is also really, really important. Yeah, and we know that, like you said, it's about being with other people, being able to smell them. Spot on.
And everyone's guilty pleasure of people watching.
People watching, absolutely.
Non-guilty pleasure
Non-guilty.
Since the beginning of time. Yes.
But that's it, and that's what when we bring it back to spaces. Maybe you have a people watching bar, Tasha, in the social hub or something like that, right? It's just like, be on your own. It's fine. We're welcome in this space, but you're not compelled to be in conversation, to be socializing, to be having a drink, to be doing whatever it is that you may or may not feel like at that moment, but you're welcome to be in this space. Absolutely critical. And to smell the coffee that's being brewed for someone else, or the sandwich that's being made, that's all part of and that was really powerful in the report. Absolutely. Just to let you know, Erin, there's a request for that report to be shared.
Oh, gladly.
That you mentioned.
Okay, I can send the actual article, but it is heady. But then there's a bunch of interviews with the people that published it, and that is like very digestible. I just want to say, Alastair, and like building on exactly what you just said, one of the greatest, easiest design strategies to allow exactly what you just said, like be there, but don't feel pressured at all, is both bar seating, but also seating where like you look out a window. So it's just a little strip and there's like stools and you look out a window. And I actually sit on something just like that all the time and work and feel connected with other people. But I think it's very easy to do, takes very little space, is super inexpensive, and is really effective. So just want to throw that out there.
Wonderful. Pamela, we're coming up to time, but I wonder if you wanted to share a final reflection on our discussion.
Oh, what a privilege to get that. I mean, I want to say thank you. It's been a really, really good webinar. It's really been useful and interesting. And I suppose for me, it's about continuing this really great work, thinking about how we might support individuals who are reporting loneliness and creating spaces for them to help them alleviate that experience. But no, really excellent work that you're doing. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Erin. Thank you, Tasha. You're both leading inspiring pieces of work individually and wonderful organizations. Thank you, Pamela, for your enduring partnership and your friendship to us at Economics Mutuality Alliance. It's been a joy to have you guys on the panel. I'll hand over to Nick again to close the webinar.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. And a big thanks to all our speakers for contributing to such an insightful conversation. We've heard how loneliness isn't just about the absence of close relationships. It's often about a lack of belonging or feeling excluded from the everyday flow of social life. And for businesses, that's where the opportunity lies. From rethinking office design to creating inclusive customer spaces, from employee well-being to community connection, space can be a powerful lever for change. If today's session has sparked an idea, opened up a question, or made you look at your spaces a little differently, we'd love to explore that with you. You'll find my email address in your inbox from when you signed up. Just reply to that if you're interested in continuing the conversation. We're building a network of leaders across sectors who are passionate about combating loneliness, and we'd love for you to be part of it. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day.